All right. At the end of what I read yesterday, Amal was really upset about something. Do you remember what she was really upset about? Sam? Well, she wasn't upset that it's a baby girl, but everybody around her is upset that it's a baby girl, right? So she says, how dare she act so sorry for us? And with her own daughter standing right there. So this was her friend Fazia's mother, who was acting like it was just this terrible thing that they had another girl to deal with. Now, Fazia's mom runs a marketplace, so she's always up on the gossip. That's that friend who's always up on the gossip because her mom is up on the gossip of the town. Right? Okay. The tube lights above us flickered before shutting off. The overhead fan slowed to a halt. Another blackout. Seema rushed to open the windows. Last week's blackout left us without electricity for over 2 hours. Already I felt the heat rising from the concrete floor. Rabia and Safa came running into the living room. Rabia's face was streaked with tears. She glowered at Safa. "She took my doll!" Rabia shrieked. Before Seema and I could respond, Rabia took off after Safa, chasing her around the sofa. Safa laughed and skipped, tripping on the edge of our rug and skidding headfirst into the table. A glass perched on its edge trembled before crashing onto the floor. Water seeped onto her and into the rug. The noise echoed off the walls. Now, both girls were crying. My mother must have heard the commotion. She had to. I walked over to her bedroom and peeked inside. The curtains were tightly drawn. Her back was curled to the window, her eyes shut. "Amma," I asked softly, but she didn't respond. The baby began whimpering in my arms. I took a deep breath, closed the door behind me, and looked at my sisters, both their faces wet with tears. Amma never yelled at us. Despite the younger two and their constant arguments, she found a way to be patient. Until she was better, I had to try. Unfortunately, Parvin walked into the house just then. She carried a basket of laundry fresh from the clothesline and set it down before scooping the baby for me. "Let me get her to your mother," she said as the overhead fan whirled back on. "She's sleeping," I said. "I just checked." "Well, the baby needs to eat," she said. "Don't worry, I'll talk to her." Seema soothed the girls while I cleaned up the shards of glass. I hadn't understood how much my mother did to keep the house running until Seema and I tried to fill her shoes. Parvin helped us as always, doing laundry, washing dishes, and chopping vegetables for dinner, but the work kept piling up, and watching two boisterous little girls was a whole job unto itself. We were so busy, I barely noticed the call to evening prayers for the minaret in the distance when the sun setting outside our window. Seema finished drying dishes with Parvin later that night while I put the girls to sleep. I was hoping to sit for a few minutes when I came out of their bedroom, but cringed when I saw the basket of clothing Parvin had brought in. My mother normally ironed all the clothes as soon as Parvin pulled them off the clothesline. It kept the cotton chemises from getting hopelessly wrinkled. But today the clothes still sat in their basket untouched. Our school uniforms lay crumpled at the top of the heap. "I'll get the ironing board," Seema said, reading my mind. "Let's at least get tomorrow's clothing sorted out." I surveyed the house. The girls' dolls lay scattered around the sofa. The groceries Parvin picked up this afternoon rested in burlap sacks in the kitchen. Crumbs littered the rug, and there was still no sign of Amma being ready to get up and help. All she managed was to feed the baby. I still had to change the diapers. "What's wrong?" Seema asked, returning from my parents' bedroom with the iron and narrow metal board. "Everything," I said. "How are you going to keep up with it all and go to school? Look at all these clothes. It'll take me hours to get through them all." "We'll figure out a system," Seema said. "You'll do the ironing at night after the girls go to bed, and in the morning, I'll get everything organized for dinner." But I knew it was impossible. "I'm going to have to stay home," I told Seema. "I'll stay home too then," Seema said. "No, you just switched to the upper class a few weeks ago. You can't fall behind. But it's too much work for you to do alone. Parvin is here too. We'll be fine. I'm sure it'll just be a few more days until Emma's back to her old self." I pressed the warm iron to Seema's uniform, hoping what I said was true. So what does this tell us about the school system in Pakistan? Sam?
They don't like girls hang out with boys? Or they have like separate schools?
Well, they have separate schools, so that's one thing that we already knew. But the fact that Amal can stay home for a week after her baby sister is born. Like we said yesterday, if Peyton had to stay home after Lincoln was born for a whole week to help her mom, would that have been okay? Would the government have been, yeah, that's fine. Stay home for a week with mom. Nope. In the United States, children are entitled to an education. And they are required to be given an education by their parents, whether their parents send them to public school, homeschool them, or send them to private school. Parents have to choose one of those options, right? So in Pakistan, not so much a big deal. At least not in this situation. I don't know the laws in Pakistan, right? They might be different, okay? Pakistan is the country. Pakistani, I am not Pakistani, no. So I don't know all of the rules, but I do know that in this situation, it was perfectly fine for her dad to say, you can't go to school now. And nobody blinked an eye. And that used to be the case, like back in when America was first getting settled. Boys would often, when it was time to plow the fields or do anything in the fields during the big heavy times, they just didn't go to school, and it was fine. And the girls, if they needed to stay home and help mom, they just did, and that was fine. The government didn't step in. How does Amal feel about not being able to go to school? She's pretty upset about it, right?